Hello, everyone, and welcome to Zoom O'Clock with your host, Tessy Antony de Nassau. I have a wonderful guest today, as always, an inspirational woman, a trailblazer, just someone I'm looking up to. Eve Rodsky. It's a beautiful name, but I'm never sure if I say it right. Did I say it right, Eve?
Yes, you did. Thank you, Tessy.
Perfect. It's such a pleasure to have you here, dear Eve. Where are you and how are you?
How are you? I'm good. I'm in Los Angeles. I'm from New York, Tessy, but I've been living in LA for 10 years and then now sort of stuck here since the pandemic, but excited to resume traveling soon. I'd love to be able to meet you in person.
Oh, absolutely. You have no idea how much I would love to meet you in person, and I hope it's going to be very soon. So let me, for the wonderful human beings who have tuned in on our YouTube channel, and also for the ones listening on this through this recording on all of these amazing podcast channels, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all these others, let me introduce you properly. Also, small disclaimer, if you hear someone very small breathing next to me,
it's little baby
Theodore, he is eating at the same time as we're recording. I just couldn't make it work to have him done feeding before the recording, and I didn't want to postpone. So, little disclaimer for everyone, he's part of the show, but that is what it is. We are multitasking women and we make it work. Maybe not. Maybe not.
Hi, baby.
It's okay. No, he got scared.
So cute with big teeth.
He is a big boy. He's a very big boy and he's wonderful. Okay, so let me just put it like this. There you go. Sorry for that. And I will introduce you now. So Eve Rodsky is working to change society one partnership at a time by coming up with a new 21st century solution to an age-old problem. Women shouldering 2/3 or more of the unpaid domestic work and childcare for their homes and families. Eve Rodsky transformed a blueberries breakdown into a catalyst for social change when she applied her Harvard-trained background in organizational management to ask the simple yet profound question: what would happen if we treated our homes as our most important organizations? Her New York Times bestselling book and Reese's book club pick, Fair Play, a gamified life management system that helps partners rebalance their domestic workload and reimagine their relationship, has elevated the cultural conversation about the value of unpaid labor and care. In her highly anticipated follow-up, Find Your Unicorn Space, Reclaim Your Creative Life in a Too Busy World, we all know what that means, Rodsky explores the cross-section between the science of creativity, productivity, and resilience, described as the antidote to physical, mental, and emotional burnout. Rodsky aims to inspire a new narrative around the equality of time and the individual right to personal time choice that influences sustainable and lasting change on the policy level. Eve, what a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for that beautiful introduction, Tessy.
Absolutely. Well, let me say it in the words of Reese Witherspoon herself: a hands-on, real talk guide for navigating the hot button issues that so many families struggle with, when we were talking about your book, The Fair Play. Then we have Arianna Huffington saying, revolutionary, can help you succeed and truly thrive in all aspects of your life. Fantastic. So, dear Eve, if I may ask the first question, what does it mean, the politics of housework?
It's a great question. So I think what's so dangerous, Tessy, about home life, and now I've spoken to women and men in 17 countries, what's dangerous about home life, and it's also universal, is that we think we're fighting about, as you saw, my blueberries breakdown was a text my husband Seth sent me that said, I'm surprised you didn't get blueberries. We think we're fighting about who's getting the blueberries. We think we're angry because somebody forgot to load the dishwasher correctly. So the problem is the home presents so small. And that's a problem, because ironically, this last frontier of feminism in the home is really political and bigger issues. The private lives are public issues. And so when we have, when we talk about the politics of housework, or we're talking about the fact that women's unpaid labor is the social safety net for so many developed nations, for developing nations. And that is something we have to address. It is not about the sponge in the sink or the unwashed dishes or the blueberries, even though that's where it starts.
Yeah.
This is about the politics of what happens when societies believe they don't need social safety nets. And it's funny, I was talking to one German politician. The US is the worst, so I'll just disclaimer that. But I was talking to one German politician in the south of Germany who was saying, you don't really need to legislate against women. You just need to require that kids come home for lunch. If you want women not to be in positions of power or in the workforce, because they were talking about a policy, I guess, and some.
Yeah, but it's true.
Where kids were coming home for lunch, and the labor force participation of women was a lot less, obviously, than the places where school provided lunch and kids could stay for a full day.
No, absolutely. And I agree with you. We have that here as well. And I remember growing up, my mom, she really gave up everything to raise us, 5 children, right? And be home all the time. And I remember the discussion, even just for my dad to get over the fact that my mom wanted to go back to work once we were a bit more self-reliant. And my dad was like, this is not possible. And why are you doing this? And all of these things. And my mom was like, well, it's important to me, firstly, finding my unicorn space. I want to feel some value, not just as a mom and as a wife, but also for myself. And at the same time, she said also, it's going to be good for the family. And I remember the discussions. My father's Italian, and Italian man.
No, Italy was not great in my research for gender division of labor. I will say that.
Yes, and so so I remember that, and then now as a mom of 4 myself, I and having baby Theodore, who now I gave him to my husband.
Yes.
So that we could properly talk. He just finished his dinner. Was that, going back to work was really important to me. And a lot of people say, well, why do you go back to work so early? I went back after Theodore was 2 months old. And I said, well, firstly, I have a few other kids I need to take care of, right? They depend on my income. But then also I said, it kind of like keeps me sane knowing that I have my own space as well. And if that is for me to work, why not, right? And I said, and of course, the income, it's important.
More than that, look at you. You're sharing yourself with the world. You were telling me about all of your projects that are coming up. The things you do, even if it didn't provide any income, Tessy, I would say are incredibly valuable for what your profile and what the words that come out of your mouth can mean for other women.
No, it's true. It's true. I really, I feel very privileged and always humbled when I get these hundreds of letters from women every month talking about their lives and what they want to change and how, and really struggling, where they say, well, my husband doesn't help, or my husband left me, or, how have you done it with divorce and the kids? And then also, how can I, because I always talk about Frank, my husband, he's fantastic and he helps me a lot. We really share our chores, and that means as well him doing the dishes or cooking dinner.
We love Frank. I got to meet him yesterday. I love you, Frank. Thank you this is a love letter to men.
It's not normal, right? It's not normal. And I think, as you say in your book, which brings me to the next question, right, is really not just a mental lobe, and that breaking point, which I would love to get to as well. But one question would be really interesting for me, which is the top 13 mistakes couples make. Tell me about that.
Well, for Fair Play, Tessy, was not meant to be a book. Fair Play was a fix for my own marriage. And what it was an understanding that I did not have career marriage combo I thought I was going to have. I could have been one of those women writing you a letter saying my life looked nothing like I thought it was going to look. And I had the privilege of it looking different because I grew up in a single mother household where I was my mother's parental child. I filled out her everything for her, dealing with eviction notices, late utility bills, paying her rent, reminding her to pick up my brother from school. And so I saw how hard it was to do this alone when you don't have a Frank, or now my husband, Seth, who has changed a lot since I wrote a book about him. But this started when after my second son, Ben, was born, when I had a 3-year-old and a toddler, where I was a statistic that I was living that I didn't know, which was that women shoulder 2/3 or more of what it takes to run a home and family, regardless of whether we work outside the home.
Yeah.
And so the way I look at these issues is, if we don't really address these assumptions and these root causes, then we're never going to get to any solutions. And so for me, it was this idea that even somebody who lived in a single parent household and who, as you so beautifully said, like, I'm a Harvard trained communicator, I'm a mediator and a lawyer, I'm trained to have difficult conversations. I still found myself in shame, alone, feeling like it was my fault.
Yeah.
Saying I needed to fix myself if I just got up an hour earlier. But it never occurred to me that inviting Seth into his full power in the home would be the key to unlock me stepping out into the full power in the world.
Wow. Yeah, that's so powerful, because I'm sure a lot of women listening to this as well will be like, well, how? Right? How do you start the conversation? So you, as an expert in it, right? And that's a question also in my mind, because the world knows I got divorced. And how do you do it? How do you start that conversation? Because some people say, well, you train your husband, you need to train him.
No, he's not a dog. He's not a dog.
Exactly. That's what I say. I say, well, people have their they come with their baggage, right? And also the way they have been raised at home and so on. So how do you have these conversations, right? Where you say, and it's never too late to have that conversation.
Never
right?
too late.
After a 10-year marriage, you can say, hey. So how would you start this?
Well, what I would say is that there's no excuse, because we're in a no excuse zone now, whether it's through fair play or lots of technologies out there. There's no excuse anymore for men not to participate as an equal partner in the home. It's just, there's no excuse. This is the 21st century. We rely on women's income. We can't do it anymore. We're completely burned out. So we're entering that no excuse zone. And the way we get there is understanding how much this also benefits men. I'll tell you this really small story, Tessy, because it just happened and it reminds me of how powerful fair play can be, but in these small instances. This couple, I'll call them Richard and Amy, I won't use their real names, but they were starting to play fair play. And what fair play is, the premise of the book is this understanding that when you have difficult conversations about the home, you're trading in assumptions for structured decision-making. And we now know structured decision-making is the way to end bias. So what I mean by that is, one man said to me, oh, you mean like my home, where we wait to decide who's taking the dog out, right? When it's about to take a piss on the rug. And I said, yeah, exactly that home, but the opposite, right? It's understanding who's in charge of the dog on Wednesdays, so that you're not fighting in the moment over who's taking the dog out over and over and over again. That's decision fatigue. That leads to burnout. So when this couple started having the conversations to make sure that it's not a list, because we know lists don't work. We've been making lists for 100 years, and that is the training your husband language that I despise. This couple, it's a metaphor, there's also real cards, but the book has a metaphor of 100 tasks that make up the home from 10 years of research. And in those tasks, you decide whether or not you want to keep it in your deck or not. So for example, maybe you don't have an aging parent. If you don't have an aging parent, then you can say, okay, that card is not in play, but cleaning is in play because we have to clean our toilets. So they go through the cards. Obviously, dishes is in play. They need to fill out school forms. School forms are in play. Dry cleaning is in play because they both work outside the home. So one card they get to is magical beings.
Okay.
And they had to call me and say, well, what exactly does that mean? And I said, well, you have to read the book. But basically, it's Santa, it's Tooth Fairy, it's Lucky Leprechaun. In America, we have Elf on the Shelf. I don't know if you do that.
Oh, yes, we have one. It's called Bonnie.
Yeah. So all these different magical beings, they decide that that's valuable to them because part of these difficult conversations is not just saying who does what. You go pick up the strawberries or you wash the dishes. It's why we care about these things. And after a pandemic, we have to stop and pause and say, why do we do these things? Why did we sign our child up for tennis? So this couple decides that magical beings is going to stay in their deck as one of the fair play cards. And Richard decides he's going to be the Tooth Fairy. He's going to take that card. So what Amy tells me is that the first time he was supposed to be the Tooth Fairy for their daughter, the Tooth Fairy didn't come.
Oh, no.
So she said before these conversations, sort of before the fair play, what would have happened was she would have said to him, you're the worst father that's ever existed. You don't know how to do anything. You're incompetent. I'll never let you do anything again. So that would have just derailed everything. He wouldn't have wanted to do more in the home because he couldn't get anything right. She would have communicated in this verbal assassin way. And then Richard admitted he would have blamed Amy for not reminding him to put the money under the pillow. That was their dynamic. So after fair play, what Richard tells me is that he owns his mistake. He says, I was in charge of the Tooth Fairy and I messed up. When that happens, then the other person can relax and say, okay, at least, they're taking responsibility. He decides to carry through his mistake. He emails a woman. It turns out there's a woman at the end of the email address, toothfairy@gmail.com, Tessy. She responds.
Wow.
Like he didn't think he's going to get a response. He gets a response from this woman saying, I'm sorry I didn't come. Tooth Fairy is backed up right now because of the supply chain issues. So he prints it out for his daughter and says, look, this Tooth Fairy is backed up. There's a supply chain issue of her picking up teeth. It's happening all over America. You can ask your teachers, but the Tooth Fairy is going to come tonight. And when she comes late, she brings double the money. And that was it.
Amazing.
Kate is the Tooth Fairy. They have this beautiful bond. It didn't break their relationship. She can still trust and have accountability with her partner. It's such a small story, but to me, it says everything about the different dynamics. It's in the way that you talked about Frank yesterday, the fact that you look at each other, you can say, I have ownership here. When I hold the baby, it's not just bouncing him around, waiting to give him back to you. I will change him. I will bathe him. Those taking ownership in your home is actually a great thing for men too, because nobody wants a place where they can't get anything right.
Yeah, that's 100% sure. 100% true. Even now, he just wrote me because he took the baby so we can talk. And he just wrote me and he said, would you like me to bath him? And he's terrified of bathing the baby. I don't know why. Maybe it's a man thing, but because he's so small and with the water and everything. But it makes me very proud that he would even say that, right?
Yeah,
so
100%.
I'm like, yes, thank you, right? How nice is that?
But that's it, right? How great. And then now Frank, when he gets more experience bathing a baby, which is very scary and hard. And I also hated it because their heads flop. And I'm like, I always felt like I'd let my head alone. And my baby's head always flopped back. And I'm like, oh shit, I forgot their neck isn't strong yet. But then Frank gets more used to bathing the baby. And then he feels confidence in bathing the baby. And then in that moment, maybe you get the first smile or, the first laugh. And then that connection can't be something that's ever taken away. And that's what we're talking about here. The beauty of looking at chores and housework, not as, I have to do the dishes or I have to bathe the baby, but what humanity. Fair play, these tasks that we talk about, these are our humanity, Tessy. We make our memories from how we went to the grocery store, where we bought our food, who cooked for us. These are our memories.
No, absolutely. It is really about that. I need to read the book thoroughly. I really think it will be, well, it's something what we're very open about it, right? We're both divorced. So we have both done mistakes in our past relationship. That's why it didn't work out, right? And getting married again is kind of like, a lot of our friends say, wow, you're brave, right? And having another baby, even my husband is almost 50. It's extremely brave for his friends. They're like, wow, Frank, he's like that unicorn in his group, because they're all like, oh, I don't know if I would be doing that again. And it's really, one thing we're very honest about is that we can always improve. And as such, we have a little book club ourselves where we read a book, also about relationships now and then talk about it, that we really kind of try to be better than what we were before. And I think a book such as yours can definitely help for that. So need to get through it entirely after our talk as well. Moving over to your next book then, The Unicorn Space. Because another question Frank asked me then, he said, so what is your unicorn space? And it's a very interesting question, because I've never thought about it like that. Mom of 4, having several companies, being a wife, household, and all of these things. I completely forgot about myself. I always say, well, I sometimes do some gym in the basement. I have a little reformer machine there. But actually, since he asked me that yesterday, I have been really thinking about it, and I don't have a unicorn space, to be honest. I realize I don't have one. Yeah, I meditate sometimes. But tell us about that. What is a unicorn space? Because I know that people will think now, well, what is Tessy talking about? What is
right? What are you talking about? Exactly. Well,
Exactly.
I will say, I do think this podcast is one of your unicorn spaces. Now that I've gotten to listen to you and how you connect with women. So let's explain what was happening. So what happened why did a book about creativity become a sequel to Fair Play? Because what was happening was that even when people were finding more time, Tessy, what was happening was that people were admitting to me that in midlife, or, after the times when we're allowed to be creative, so after like preschool, that in this time of adulthood, that 2 things were happening. One, they were feeling overwhelmed and bored. And I didn't like that combination. I think that's a deadly combination, to feel overwhelmed from the mundane. Or not saying to me over and over again, I don't have the time to do what I have to do. So don't tell me I need to find time to do what I want to do. That's just not for me right now. And then this idea that there's no permission to be unavailable from our roles. So if Tessy, businesswoman, is working in service of making money, okay, check, professional. She's allowed to do that. If Tessy's doing something with her teenage daughter, check, she's a parent, she's allowed to do that. If Tessy is making Frank a hot meal, then check, she's allowed to do that. So as women, we're allowed to be professionals, partners, parents, but outside of that, we're really not allowed to use our time on anything else. Mm-hmm. And we've been conditioned from birth to have this most beautiful, valuable currency of our time. We've been conditioned to give it away to others. And so a unicorn space is an understanding that this is not about one passion. This is not a hobby, which connotes infrequency. This is a pattern of living a life of saying, yes, it's going to rain on us. We may not always be happy. We may be overwhelmed and bored, but I will have experiences that people can't take away from me. So most often in a unicorn space, which we'll talk about, it's an active pursuit that makes you come alive. It's not gym. That is self-care. It's not friendships, even though friendships come along with unicorn space often, like we became friends through this unicorn space of yours. Yeah. It is an active pursuit that makes you come alive. And often when people have a unicorn space experience, mm-hmm. the feeling that they report back to me is, I can't believe I just did that. I cannot believe I just did that. So whether it's you see a film, a documentary in a theater, or whether it's you see your podcast and how people are reacting to that. I can't believe this woman reached out to me because of what I said. or it's you can't believe that the crochet bunny that you made is still in the crib of your good friend that you gave it to, that's their favorite lovey. These I can't believe I did that experiences are what I want women. I want to gift that to all women, because at any stage of our life, we can have them. I spoke to one woman who at 56 had 4 kids, was a stay-at-home wife in Colorado. And she said, you know what? I just need speed. I've been stuck for so long. And so that metaphor became a reality. And she's now the top women rally car racer in the world. Wow. And she's racing on every continent. At 67, she's in Antarctica right now. So we don't all have to be a rally car racer. But I do want to say that there is beauty in having experiences that can't be taken away from you.
That's really, really special. Yeah, it's interesting because, we women, we are just I remember, when I tried to claim some of my unicorn space in the past and step up.
What happened? Tell me what happened.
Well, it was just, then I'm ungrateful.
Right, ungrateful.
Or I'm spoiled.
Spoiled, right.
Or, all of these things.
Or why are you spending time on that? Why are you spending time on that, Tessy? Or this is just a passion project. Similar what you said that your mother heard. It's literally generational trauma, where we all know some woman in our lives that could have been something else, but was prevented by this societal expectations and guilt and shame. And I just want to break that cycle for us, because it's a trauma. And it's so hard, because even you doing this, the act of bravery, which is so embarrassing that I have to say that in the 21st century, but there is such bravery still in saying, you know what, I'm not going to cancel this meeting I have. I'm going to feed my child. He may or may not burp. Maybe he won't get the best meal ever. I'm going to hand him off to Frank and we're going to still talk. That is subversive. And having other women watch you do that is really, really important. So that's why I believe that this is a unicorn space. And so I just hope you keep doing it.
Oh, well, thank you. Yes, I do love my podcast, to be honest. Also because I feel really connected to my guests, like, look at us. I just met you because of my dear friend and your dear friend, Mara, who introduced us. And it just feels that I'm so close already to you, right? We talked about you yesterday. I got to meet your husband very briefly.
Yes.
And
you got to see his shoe.
Baby, yes, his shoe. And we talked about Reese as well, Reese Witherspoon, that you work with. And it's just, it feels so familiar already. And we literally maybe have talked for 1 hour in total, in its entirety. And it's just so special to me. But I must say, when you say, with the baby and so on, I was terrified that he was still breastfeeding while you came on. I didn't want to be late. And I was terrified, but I thought, and my husband said, should I take it? I said, no, he needs to, because otherwise he would have been miserable. And I said, no, he needs to. And I was really terrified. So yeah, just try it.
But showing that interaction between you and Frank, that normalization of the fact that, it wasn't you being perfect. You didn't have to do it on your own. You can have a partner who can bathe the baby. These are things that it was shocking to me. Again, even in the European countries where in America we look to for our policies for being family friendly, what I was still hearing from so many different women, Tessy, were things like, here's the secret. My partner still doesn't have equal attitudes, even though we live in a country that has more equality, or I'm allowed to make money, but I'm not allowed to, take 4 nights away to go skiing by myself. And it was just so much guilt and shame still, even in places where there's more family friendly policies. And I think that was what made me realize that as women, no matter where we are on the earth, we're going to be able to relate to each other because of these emotions of guilt and shame that have been forced on us. And also because at some point, all of us have been defined solely by our roles.
Yeah, it's true. It's really, well, at the end of the day, it's these well, people like to put other people in boxes because it's easier understandable, right? It's not like that people are malicious, that they judge you because they want to judge you. Well, some do, but not everyone does. But it's just easier for them to cope with who you are and what you represent to them. But at the same time, I think this book can be really helpful for that, is about taking it from the discussion to the action. And I think that is, to do that leap of faith and actually do it instead of just talking about it, right? Because we women, we know what our problems are, and we women, we know how we could fix it, but we need to have the guys around, as you say, with the policy part. For example, in the US, I'm still terrified thinking about, one of my other son's teachers. He was a baby at that time when I lived in Florida. She was more than ready to deliver. I think she worked until the day before she was delivering her baby. And 4 days after delivering the baby, she was back in kindergarten teaching my son. And I remember her taking my son, and he was just like running around and pushing away, And I just thought, my gosh, she is 9 months pregnant. And there are these children which are not light. They are big guys, right? And they're pushing away and they're kicking her and everything. And I said, how can that be possible to see a woman like that needing to work because you don't get paid leave in the US?
None.
Well, not at that time. I don't know.
No, we have none, zero.
Exactly. And it's just, these women are raising the future of our society. Right? They're raising the next president of America. They're raising the heads of industries. They're raising our teachers. They're raising everyone, right? Women raise the future of our kind. And it's just, why are we not giving them more opportunities to do that properly? But no, then we need to spend all of that money, right, to go into childcare, rather than paying the mothers to stay home in the first place and raising their children properly the way they want as well, if they choose to do that.
If they choose to. No, but I think that's the point, is that there's no choice. Because we, again, as we started this podcast, what we've done is we've assumed that women will be the social safety net of all of these countries. Again, it's worse in America, but still this idea that when your child is sick, who does the school call? Because what was happening, Tessy, again, no matter what choice you made, what all I care about is that you have choice over how you use your time. And so what happens so often is that because we've been conditioned to give away our most valuable currency, our time, away for free, we start getting conditioned that our time is less valuable. And so the way it plays out, and why so many women said to me, I want a unicorn space, but I feel guilt and shame when I claim it, or, I don't believe I deserve a permission to be unavailable from my roles, or I wouldn't even know how to ask for this time for myself. It all came down to the fact that every one of us has heard the message that our time is not valuable. We know in many, many countries, if women enter a male profession, salaries go down. We know that we say things to women like breastfeeding is free, when it's really an 1,800 hour a year full-time job. And so then what happens when we start hearing these messages that our time is not valuable, we start to internalize it. And so then as women, we say to ourselves, I do more in the home. I don't have time for my unicorn space because my husband makes more money than me. This happens in LGBTQIA relationships too. They make more money than me. My job is more flexible. We start saying things to us. These are all toxic messages. We say things like, in the time it takes me to tell him, her, they what to do, I should do it myself. Mm-hmm. We say things to ourselves like, oh, I'm a better multitasker. I'm wired differently for care. We say things to ourselves like, I can find time. We're not Albert Einstein. We can't mess with the space-time continuum. There's no way to find time. There's just a different expectation over how women are supposed to use their time on this earth. Mm-hmm. And so pushing back to say, no, I'm spending Sundays to write a book, Seth. You get the privilege of being with our children all day by yourself on Sundays, so I can write all day.
Yeah.
That is still considered so out of the norm in America that I would have people look at me, see my ring on my finger, and say to me, what are you doing here on a Sunday? Do you have a family? Like, just so confused that I was taking a Sunday every Sunday for 6 months to write a book for myself.
Yeah. No, it's really, I think that's why your books are so timely, because, the unicorn space, but also the fair play one. We had the pandemic, we have a pandemic. And I think if not now, then it will never be clear what is happening in homes with husbands and wives, right? And partners, and in all their beautiful diversities. And it's just, it's about time that men understand what we women need to do, all of that unpaid care work, right?
Yeah.
Taking care of people, making sure we're safe, so everything is clean, right? Because the virus could have been everywhere.
Yep.
And it's all of these things, right? And I think, your books, I think it's the right time now for everyone to read this. And I certainly will buy a few copies and get them to my girls here. And before I let you go, one last question. What is one, other than, of course, your books, what is one podcast or a book that you read in the past that inspired you to do that leap of faith that you did to write these books, where you were like, wow, that person has inspired me, and I want to step out of my box as well and show these other women and men that this can be done properly? Who was that? What was that?
I love that so much. I'll give two answers, one a more current answer. And then number one, of course, for me, it was 100% my mother, because she, as a single mother, said to me, we lived a very working class existence in the Lower East Side of New York City in the 80s, when my basement was a methadone clinic. And so it was not physically safe, but she still said to me, look, you are 13, you can put your disabled brother to bed. I need to work nights because I want tenure. I want to be a tenured professor. That's going to be good for us in the long term, for my economic security, for my career. And so since I was born, even though I had a complicated relationship with that idea, I was hearing the message that you are not my whole life, that my ideas, my writing, my teaching is as important as you, child. And that was actually really humbling and important, because it gave me a sense of where I should sit in the world, that it doesn't revolve around me. And so I think it's actually a great lesson for kids to learn. So I would say from birth, it was my mother, but then more recently, I've been so inspired by this woman named Suleika Johad. She has an Instagram account. I can even spell it for you. She has a book that I read recently that was so important, because I was researching creativity, and so many people were saying, well, isn't that a nice to have in good times? And the point is that actually creativity is the most important thing to have. It's not optional in bad times. It's what gets people through in bad times. And so her book is called Between Two Kingdoms. Suleika Johad. It's her Instagram is SuleikaJaouad. Her book, Between Two Kingdoms, is such a beautiful book about what grief, healing, and creativity. So, and she narrates it. So, you could just download it on whatever, place for audiobooks. And so I would say she inspires me every day with her creativity through trauma.
It's beautiful drawings as well, huh?
Beautiful. Yeah. She's really amazing. Her book
Instagram now, really nice.
Beautiful. And she's back in the hospital for a bone marrow transplant. It's about her life through leukemia and what creativity and connection. And that's the last thing I'll say, Tessy, that a unicorn space should feel like three things. It should feel that there's a curiosity there, that you're connecting with someone else, and that you complete something. So whether it's one podcast episode, like you said, we had this curiosity. What would this woman tell me? this connection with each other. And then completion is just whatever, I'm going to upload it. I don't care if it's not
Get it done.
edited well, it's going to get out there. It is what it is. You know, that completion, that's not perfection, is a beautiful message. So that's what I love about Zuleika's work, is that her book is all about being curious, connecting with others on this road trip she takes after she was sick. And then the completion of her novel. I mean, of her memoir.
Wow. Well, I will definitely check that out as well. And put it in the show notes for everyone to explore.
Yes.
As well as your beautiful books. And there's just so many questions. So I think we need to do another podcast for sure.
Love to.
But thank you so much for your time. We definitely need to talk more offline, as we already discussed.
Yes, I said we'll do hopefully some activism things together in the future. But I'm glad this was a start, that we got to meet.
100%. Thanks to our dear Mara.
Yes.
Dr. Mara Harvey.
Thank you, Mara.
Our children's finance guru. I have a podcast with her as well, so do check it out as well. So for everyone, please like it, share it, comment, rate it, so that we can reach more people around the world with the amazing message Eve has just given us. The books will all be in the show notes. Also follow her on the Instagram platforms that I will share as well, and get the books, of course. Thank you so much, my dear Eve.
Bye, Tessy. I'll see you soon.
Speak soon.
Bye. Bye.